So I strongly believe that the way that we teach about fitness and athleticism is completely wrong in much of the education. And there's this element, the key element is competition at the beginning. And what you find out, and this is the reason why I think it's wrong, and it's pretty obvious. When you look at the number of adults that actually do athletic activities, it's quite pathetic, right? So once you're past the age of 30, the number of people that are doing some sort of, whether it's a fitness regime or athletic, just element of walking or, you know, whether it, you name it, right? Like some sort of athleticism um, where you get your heart rate up a little bit, or you work out for more than 20 minutes. The number of adults that actually do this is actually spectacularly low. And I don't think it has anything to do with the sort of sedentary lifestyle that we have and all the sort of commentary that you think about. I actually think it's the way that we train and we think about athletics. And if you were to look at fitness and athletics, the name of the game is winning. That's the priority. That's what everybody thinks you're supposed to do, is go as hard and as rigorous as you possibly can and sustain that to beat everybody else out. It's sort of, I my hunch is that this goes back to probably something like the Romans or the Greeks, where we were doing whether it's the Olympics or, the gladiators, where people would train for athleticism, and they would be in their, probably in their teens, no more than like 20 years old, and they would be competing, and then we would die by the age of 30. Now, all of this has been thrown out the window because we live so long. Right, so we can't deal with athleticism and fitness in the same way that we were dealing with it 100 years ago. Um, when most people would die mostly at about 50 years of age. Um, we just can't deal with that anymore because that athleticism likely leads to some of this premature injuries, likely leads to people feeling frustrated and wanting to drop out, um, most people not being able to sustain things well into their, when they're 50 and 60 and 70 years old, because they think that they're behind, right? Like, and naturally what's going to happen is that your body is going to slow down, and that's fine. Um, but you're going to perceive that you're not winning anymore. And psychologically, that's very difficult to deal with when you perceive that you're no longer winning, you're no longer keeping up with the pack. And, a different way to approach this, and what we should be really focusing on, is not competition and sort of maximizing returns, um, which is a very short run game, right? It's very much along the lines of what I often talk about on this channel, is to sort of focus on, the trade-off between focusing on the short run versus the long run. And you're really focusing on maximizing the short run. If you think about the longevity of most high school athletes, they're done by the time they're about 17 years old. Now, in 100 years ago, or let's say 150 years ago, 17 years old, you're almost middle-aged, right? Like, if you live until you're 30, mid-30s to 40s, you're doing really, really well at that point. But now 17 seems spectacularly young. Right now, we're talking about, that is likely today, if a 17-year-old would probably likely live until about 120 years old. If they keep away from all of the bad stuff, right? Like, keep the weight off, um, make sure that you don't get into, all of the bad drugs, all of that kind of stuff. And, all of this is kind of tied together with this sort of perspective is that you have to win and initially, and you have to maximize initially, right? And if you just kind of flip things on its lid and you say instead of I don't need to maximize things today, what I need to do is maximize the amount of live life that I live to the fullest and joyfully over the longest period of time. When you think about that, all of a sudden, a lot of your priorities shift. A lot of things shift towards more sort of ratio thinking in the sense of how do I keep a certain percentage of this going in my life for an extended period of time. All of a sudden, it goes from I need to run as fast and as hard as I possibly can at this moment, which is fine. Um, to I need to some days I need to run really hard. Some days I need to recuperate. Some days, if there's something that's going on, I need to make sure that I am nursing it. You know, it's really a far different approach. And I think if you were to, one person that actually is probably the only person that I've seen online. There's this guy that is kind of like thirst bait on TikTok for women. And he just like chops wood. I think his name is Thorin. And, he had this comment very recently, which is along the lines of what I've been thinking about for years and years and years. And I believe he has a master's in kinesiology or something like that. And essentially, the way that we teach about fitness is just wrong, where we're maximizing. And if you look at all of the models that are out there that are modeling this behavior, they're not true. Right, they're invalid. They don't make any sense. Most of them and, allegedly, let's just say that, they allegedly look like they are on a lot of steroids. Um, Allegedly, they're sort of maximizing. You don't see a lot of these people. In fact, if you look at a lot of these sort of legendary people, that you legendary athletes that are, the role models of kind of, my generation and younger folks is they often are not living past the age of 50 years old. They're dying of heart attacks and all those kind of things. Why is that? Well, I have some reasons, but it has to do with this sort of I'm going to maximize what's going on today. It's more about the psychology of it, in as far as I'm concerned, where people in the sociology of it, where people are trying to maximize today and, really, really think about how that they can be all the best that they can be at this given moment, rather than thinking about how can I stretch things out. So at any given moment, I kind of feel a little bit, I feel that feeling, I feel good, but I know I can get back up and do it again tomorrow. And I know I can repeat that for as long as I possibly can. And it's a really different perspective. Um, if you kind of have this perspective, it's more about longevity, it's more about joy. You will choose differently what you do, and you will often prioritize things that seem, in the moment, perhaps not as, um, not as beneficial in the exact moment, but in the long run, they will do you far, far better. All right. Take care and have a wonderful day.